G'day guys, thanks for joining us tonight. My name's Dr. Dan and we're so lucky here to be joined by my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, Damus. Would I call you do you have a certain, are you denoted in a certain way in Jiu-Jitsu? You know how some people are called like senseis, or what would you?
The term they use in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they call instructors professor.
Yeah.
But it's it's kind of something that's, you know, like, I don't think people ever refer to themselves generally as professor. I always refer to my coach as professor when I talk to him. But yeah, that's I guess traditionally what it is. But I just run with Damus. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
We just go with that.
I think well, as much as you wouldn't like to be called professor, I do think that title is worthy, because recently I've started up learning different hobbies, and some have been a lot easier than others, and Jiu-Jitsu is certainly up there with some of the, one of the most technical. So it's not something that you can be a master at overnight or within a year. It's how long on average does it take to get a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu?
Well, historically and really I think still today, it's about 10 years.
10
solid years.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work, and a lot of people don't make it. I mean, vast majority that start, it's a big commitment to try and get through that far.
Yeah.
That said though, you're pretty well familiar with the skills that a black belt has by the time you get to blue belt, your first belt in Jiu-Jitsu. But yeah, certainly beyond that, it's really just spending the time, understanding timing, positioning, and really, up to the first belt, a lot of that is breadth, getting familiar with the layout of the game, so to speak.
Yeah.
And a lot of it beyond then is depth. Developing the depth and the understanding.
I'll go into a bit more of that shortly, but I guess the reason why I thought it's great to interview Damus, not only because he's my coach and I've developed a relationship with him over the short period I've known him, less than last year. I've been doing some private coaching lessons, and it's the reason why I approached Damus originally is because I was out, I wanted to start a new hobby, and I actually had a situation where I was out and I almost got into an altercation one night, and it kind of made me question my own self-confidence and thought, oh geez, if something was to arise, God forbid, we wouldn't want that, but would I be able to defend myself and handle myself? And Muay Thai was one of the martial arts that I decided to start to learn, and I am a beginner at best at that, and Jiu-Jitsu as well. And I just, so the reason I think why Jiu-Jitsu is really important is because it gives you that self-confidence. And a lot of the people I've podcast interviewed recently, I've spoken to them about, what advice would you give to young people who go to school and feel like they're being bullied or something like that. And I think self-defense is really important, and gives you that self-confidence to be that person that you want to be. And who better to talk to than a 25-year black, and Damus, he's a humble guy, and he won't be saying much here because I know what type of person he is, but he's he's been a black belt for 10 years. He's been practicing Jiu-Jitsu for 25 years now.
Yeah, it's 23, but getting pretty close.
Damus is an accountant by trade, and he's also achieved in his life a black belt in Kung Fu, is that right?
Yeah, when I was younger,
And what does Kung Fu involve?
Basically, Kung Fu again is a striking-based art. I'd say for the most part, or at least the way I learnt it. And I guess actually it's funny you say that, because I'm obviously a smaller statured person, and I always had this thing in the back of my mind that striking as a primary means of dealing with altercation, it's still ultimately it's largely a pain-based way of dealing with things, and the fact of the matter is, it really doesn't matter how good you are. If someone's bigger than you, they're always going to be able to hit harder. It's that old mass times velocity is power kind of thing. So obviously when you're smaller, you don't there's not much you can do about that mass side of it. So what appealed to me largely about Jiu-Jitsu is the fact that the primary thing that we focus on there is choking, I guess, and strangulation. So obviously the power in that is that by learning to sort of shut off the blood flow, and learning correct positioning to get into a position where you can put someone to sleep. It kind of works regardless of size.
Yeah.
So that was, to me, something that was far more reliable as a self-defense strategy.
Yeah.
Because coming through, I did karate, I did kung fu. But yeah, always in the back of my head as a smaller person, I kind of thought, what if I kind of always was never really sold on the idea that and don't get me wrong, I mean, it's part of a holistic combative approach. You need to understand, how striking works, but I think you need more than that.
Yeah.
Definitely, at least, to have options, because that's all you do. I guess it may not always work for you.
Yeah, and in a self-defense street situation, a lot of the time, the people that do try to pick on you are probably bully-like. They are probably bigger than you, and to have that confidence that it doesn't matter really what size they are.
Yeah.
You talked about, in your you did another podcast interview the other week with Brent Kettle. Force multiplication, using your leverage and not having to be the biggest guy and still being able to take on bigger guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really important. And I mean, Helio Gracie, who a lot of people, credit as being the founder of Jiu-Jitsu, the Brazilian version of Jiu-Jitsu, he always had those, always talked about three major rules, and he said if you're smaller than someone, the three assumptions you should always make is that someone's going to be bigger, faster, and stronger than you.
Yeah.
And based on those three things, the safest place actually for you to be with them, and not necessarily on the ground, but certainly the safest place for you to be with them is in a clinch.
Yeah.
So you're better off being closer rather than further away.
Yeah.
And to me, I guess always having that thing in the back of my mind that if all I can do is kick and punch, then I'm automatically locking myself into that I've got to have distance, and distance can be dangerous, particularly if you're dealing with someone that is more skilled in managing that distance than you are.
Yep.
In terms of kick and punch. If you can manage that distance to be able to close it and force the clinch, well, then you're possibly, in a pretty, you're in a much safer position, at least in terms of being able to deal with that confrontation.
Yeah, and something that comes to mind is when I first started jiu-jitsu recently, I went and watched some UFC finals when UFC first came to light, and it was Royce Gracie.
Yeah.
Is it Royce or Royce?
Royce is the way they say it.
Do some people say Roy? So
the R in Portuguese is pronounced like an H.
Yeah.
So that's why. So the Brazilians, when they talk about it, the soccer, they call him the referee, not the referee.
Yeah.
So it's a H when they pronounce it. So Royce Gracie.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that, but some of these UFC fights. This Royce Gracie, who won the UFC final, I don't know.
Oh, so he won the first, the second, and the fourth UFC.
Yeah.
And that was, that was back in the days though, when it was, now they have the weight divisions and guys go in and they fight, one fight a night. It's a professional sport now. I mean, back then it was more about style versus style, the early ones, and it was a single elimination tournament. So those, Royce was fighting 3 matches in one night.
Yeah.
So it was a different thing. It was like last man standing, king of the hill type.
And he wasn't a big guy, was he?
No, not at all. Generally always the smallest guy on the field.
Yeah, smallest guy in the field, and he'd take on some guys and win the tournament. Some of these guys was a lot heavier than him.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And again, his whole strategy, which is exactly what we're talking about. I mean, those early UFCs, he was no striker by any stretch, particularly not by the standards you see today.
Yeah.
But certainly his strategy at the time was he didn't want to be at a distance. He'd force that clinch and get him onto the ground, kind of like into his world.
Yeah.
And then through good positioning and just keeping himself safe, he'd work him into a submission and he'd just win it. So
it's a great demonstration, isn't it, of size doesn't matter in jiu-jitsu.
No.
Not as much. It's not a primary factor.
No, absolutely.
Some people might be thinking tonight, I touch base a lot on the importance of mentorship, and I carefully selected some of these questions, and some people might be thinking, how did I come up with these questions? I've got a book by one of my inspirations called Tim Ferriss, and it's called Tribe of Mentors. And I guess I just want to stop for 1 second and just say, if there's anybody that you look up to in life or anybody that you want to be like, this is a book that it's not necessarily the content, but it's the questions that he asks some of the most inspirational people. A lot of the questions that I asked you tonight, which I sent to you before we came here, a lot of them I've actually extracted from this book. And Damus actually said to me, there's some great questions. So I just want to stop for a second and just say, I hope that these questions can really give some value, because we really, as Damus is the primary mentor of mine in Jiu-Jitsu, the more you can extract and download from a brain from someone with, so much experience and wisdom, it's not always about just how much you talk to them. It's about, asking the right questions to the right people. So just be aware of some of the questions that I'm going to be asking coming up, because I hope that, we can get a lot of value out of this. So you have competed in the Australian Championships before, is that right? And the Pan Pacifics?
Yeah, did Australians and Pan Pacifics, and a number of years ago now, of course. My first time I did the Australians was in '97. So, I've competed basically in national, in Pan Pacs being international as well. So I guess I've done all of those competitions all the way up to black belt level.
Yeah.
My last competition for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was a while ago now. It was 2008, my last Jiu-Jitsu comp.
Yeah.
But
so what's the Pan Pacs? What does that mean? Pan Pacific.
Pan Pacific. So basically, the effectively the Asia Pacific area.
Yep.
So in terms of the world Jiu-Jitsu circuit, you'd say, you have the you have the Europeans, North America, the Pan Pacific. So, and of course what's going on in Brazil as well, as the other major centre. So they're kind of the four. So, a lot of the guys these days are kind of travelling and doing all of those sort of comps. And now it's a professional sport, which is fantastic. I mean, a lot of the sponsorship that was that is around now wasn't around then. And it's great to see the growth of it. Certainly though, I guess the more we're moving on now, there seems to be a real split between people that view jiu-jitsu from more of a self-defense element, and then you have others that are kind of going at it more from a competition point of view. Really, I think if you're training in a gym or in an academy that is doing jiu-jitsu properly, it should really address all of that. I think it's very important that the approach is holistic as much as possible. Pan Pacs is that's probably the biggest tournament in this part of the world.
And how did you go in those tournaments?
Oh look, last Pan Pacs I did was a long time ago. I'd probably say was probably 2006, somewhere around there. But I mean, I won the Pan Pacs in 2000, and that was as a blue belt. Long time ago. But I guess in the last few years, and probably since I've got my black belt down, I'd say a big part of my focus has really moved to coaching. But I've got plenty to say about that.
And I really want to touch on that, because I do want to touch it. I really want to go into teaching and learning, and developing new skills, and I'll go into that for a second. Sure. A question that I would like to ask you is, do you think you learn when you lose a competition or win? What do you think you get more out of? What do you think helps you develop more as a jiu-jitsu practitioner?
Well, I guess in retrospect for me, losses have been the best things that have ever happened to me. I cannot often remember necessarily how I've won, but certainly, the good thing about losses is it demonstrates where your weakness could be at any given time, or where you need work. And in hindsight, every loss that I've ever had has generally given rise over time to an area that's ultimately become a strength in my game. So, because people I think generally tend to have one of two reactions. They look at a loss, or they look at a setback, and they either bury their head in the sand, or they turn and they face it. And jiu-jitsu, I guess, is always, as an activity, it's pretty confronting. From the beginning, you're dealing with pressure and people close to you, and they're on top of you and they're squashing you, and it's it's not, it can be hard to deal with. but it teaches a lot of lessons like that. And ultimately, I've always been one of those people that kind of turns and faces. So losses to me have been the greatest, always to me, the greatest learning catalyst.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I think fundamentally, and I can't really speak from jiu-jitsu experience, but when I think of other areas in my life, I think if you've got that self-belief and you really know that, all right, I didn't win this time or I made a mistake this time, but I know I can be better.
Sure.
If you've got that self-esteem, that's such a massive asset, because as an example, in high school, you see many people, they go in high school, I was horrible at maths or something like that. And some of them have never really persevered and pushed on. They've just given up and said, no, I'm not good at maths, I failed that test, and they stop.
Yeah.
And like me, myself, and I'm very lucky that I've got self-belief, and I think I get some of that maybe from my parents, I don't know exactly, but physics, as an example, was known as one of the most difficult subjects in high school, and I took it on as a challenge, and I thought, oh, I love this, I love that it's going to be difficult, I really want to relish that challenge.
Yeah.
So as you said, you can either bury your head or you can keep marching forward, and I guess for me, that's how I'm seeing ankle locks at the moment.
Yeah, right.
Because I didn't know anything about ankle locks, and I was always almost mystified by this whole branch of jiu-jitsu as ankle locks.
Yeah.
And since you told me to download that, I try to watch it at least 4 or 5 times a week. Just it doesn't have to be all night, just 5 minutes or whatever. Just try and pick up. Yep, just plant some seeds. And that's the kind of mentality I'm taking towards ankle locks at the moment, and it's super exciting.
Yeah. I'd say to you though too, one thing I guess with losses and things like that, it's funny, because I think one of the other big things about that is that, like I remember when I got my black belt, I literally got my black belt the day before the Australian Championships in 2008. So I was preparing for that comp to compete as a brown belt.
Yeah.
And my coach surprised me the day before and says, oh, well, you're in the black belts tomorrow. So I was like, man, this is a huge step up, I'm not really sure that I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
And when I went out there and competed that day, I had Brazilian guys in my division. I remember my first match at black belt, I got knee barred in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I remember walking off and I went straight up to my coach and I was just like, I'm completely out of my league here. And he's just like, don't worry about it. You'll be right. And I'm fine. Well, the next match, I went out, fought another Brazilian guy, and I won that match by triangle choke.
Yeah.
So, and then, you get people say to you as well, and this is, I guess, the contrast. You get people come up to you and they say, wow, that's great. I can't believe you beat that guy, you know? And the one thing I think, though, that you've got to keep in the back of your mind is that it's like losses. You can learn a lot from them. But in terms of your wins, you've got to take the lesson as it comes, because, I've always said, about a lot of those, a lot of the wins that I've had, that if you could have gone back the next day and done it all again, could have all been completely reversed.
Yeah.
So a lesson is always coming to you in the time that it needs to come to you.
Yeah.
You win some days, you lose some days, but what you've got to do is not kind of get hung up on it. That's the other thing that's really important. Take the lesson for what it is. If there's something for you to learn from it, face it, do it, and improve. And make it really important.
What, I guess a convenient question to lead on to is how important? Where is it? How important is the belt? How important for a student, someone learning jiu-jitsu, or for anything in matter of that? How important is having a belt? Should a student focus on the importance of having a belt, or are there much more important things to kind of focus on?
Look, really, and I mean, it's easy to sit back as a black belt and say to someone, it's not so important. I mean, it is, but focus on the journey. The journey is really where it's at. Like concentrate on just making sure that every time you step onto the mat, that you're stepping back off a little bit better every time. It's about incremental improvement. And if you're doing that every time, the belts will take care of themselves. They really will. That said, back in the time that I came through, it was always kind of frowned upon. The old school guys were very, you never ask about belts, it'll just come when it comes. These days, I think we've got to look at what we do now is this is a service industry as well. We run a professional academy here, but we're selling a service. So,
Yep.
you know, people are well within their rights to be able to say, well, hold on, you know, what sort of time frames am I looking at here to
Yep.
be able to achieve this or achieve that? And what sort of work do I have to do? So, you know, I think it's reasonable to ask questions, because that way then you can set expectations of yourself.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, you know, park that in the back of your mind and
Yep.
just make it all about coming on the mat, giving it your best, and stepping off a little bit better every time.
Yeah.
And then
enjoying
it.
enjoying yourself.
Enjoy it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how does the belt system in jiu? Can you just like give us a hierarchical breakdown as to how it's systemized?
So white belt is your first belt. So you start as a white belt, and then the first belt after that is blue belt. So usually between white and blue, we use a stripe system. So we run with 4 stripes for each belt.
Yep.
And generally speaking, there's some requirements, things that we're looking for, I guess, for each of those stripes. But certainly, one promotion we never rush is that first one, the blue belt, because it's always been put into my mind that as a coach, you don't want to give that belt too soon.
Yep.
Because you give that one too soon, it makes it kind of flows on all the other belts.
And plants that expectational seed in that head.
Yeah, it does. But
Student,
and you've got to keep. But what you want to do the right thing. I mean, and this comes down to coaching as well. I mean, the whole point, as I said to you, it takes 10 years to get a black belt. So we have white, blue, purple,
Yeah.
brown, and then black.
Yeah.
So because of the fact that it can take 10 years to get a black belt, as coaches, we have a real, and unfortunately there's not a heap of coaches out there, I guess, that maybe have taken, this mode of thinking. But, it's important that as a coach that you leave the art in a better state than you came into it, in a sense. So what you want to do is you want to make students generationally that are stronger than you are technically,
Yep.
so they're passing on a stronger version of the art in
Yep.
their own teaching.
Yep.
If your students aren't making it to the level you're at, then you're gradually depleting the effectiveness of the art over time.
Yep.
So this is where you want students to come through, get their gradings, but you can't grade people below that standard that you have in your mind.
Yep.
And the standard that you've come up appreciating. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's taken me 11 years to get my black belt. I want my students to be able to see that each one of those belts, it takes a lot of work, but it's a great achievement.
Yep.
But you got to do the work.
Yep.
And you've got to meet, and it's you got to meet that level.
Maintaining a standard, and
Absolutely.
I guess you could, if you just flippantly promote someone to a belt without them, it weakens the brand, it weakens the ethos.
Yeah.
It might weaken the image of BJJ in general, and more specifically, if it's your dojo that it's coming out of, I guess the last thing you want, especially yourself, is, and we'll talk about your journey into starting this business in a second, but you perhaps could do yourself a disservice by saying, that's the dojo where it's easy to get belts.
Absolutely.
If you got a blue belt there, everyone gets a blue belt there, kind of thing. So
it's exactly it.
You're creating a standard. And a rep. You're creating a reputation.
Absolutely.
Which is hard to build and easy to tarnish. So.
Oh, couldn't have said it better myself. It's exactly how I feel about it.
I guess, can you tell me, so you've been, when you were younger, for your 20, and this is from Brent Kettle's podcast the other night, I actually found it, just quite remarkable that for your 21st birthday, and not many people do this, but it's a high level of sacrifice. You didn't have a 21st birthday, and you went over to Brazil and you trained over with the Brazilians for a bit.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a story or two, or something that's just something that's worth hearing about, something you learnt over there, or something that you saw?
Well, I guess the one thing I've been over to Brazil twice. So one in '98 and I went again in 2001. Probably '98 was the being, I guess, the first time I went there.
Yeah.
It was the trip that really made an impression on me. And a lot of the big name guys were in Brazil in July at that time because it was World's Month. So, all these guys that, because of course pre-internet days, Dan, these are, it was all the guys that I was only ever reading about in magazines, and it's like, wow, like, there he is, and there's this guy. And then not only do you get to see them, but then they're on the mat training, and you're like 5 metres away, just completely taken with how these guys are moving on the mat, and you're just trying to download it all, and just it made a heck of an impression on me. But I guess though the thing most of all that trip to Brazil, that first trip, really did for me is it made me appreciate how the Brazilians see it as a lifestyle. It's not something they just go and do and then they kind of, I guess, go and take drugs or they drink or anything like that. They're not like that. They're just so completely taken with their, they live it. They eat well. They go to the beach. They get plenty of sun. They get plenty of sleep. And the guys that are doing jiu-jitsu over there, it's the centerpiece of their life.
Yeah.
It's their meditation. It's their ritual. That made such an impression on me. And it was over there in Brazil that I got my blue belt, which was just amazing experience. And the school that I was at was Gracie Barra, of course, which was the mecca of jiu-jitsu, particularly at that time. And that was headed up by Carlos Gracie Jr. But one of the things that really stuck out in my mind, the day I got my blue belt, there must have been 100 people on the mat that day. Like, it was packed. And I got my belt, and I remember stepping out of the gym and kind of walking around the corner and about 10 or so metres down to this bubbler and getting a drink, in between trains and stuff like that. And Carlos was making his way out of the gym, and wherever he went, he kind of had this posse of people around him, But I remember just finishing my drink, and I sort of stood up and was wiping my face, and I had this tap on the back, and I turned around and it was Carlos, and he was just standing there. He was like, congratulations on your blue belt, well done. And that was all he said. Then he kept going, but I thought, this guy's got famous students and hundreds of people around him all the time, and I was just, it was a small thing, but it made a big impression. And then of course I went on to compete in the Worlds in '98 in Brazil, and Carlos is actually, his older brother was a guy named Carlson. Carlson was known as a real monster in jiu-jitsu. He was not an incredible practitioner, but an incredible teacher as well. Had a notorious competition team over there, and just one of the legends of the art. In my first match, I had my blue belt 2 days, and I went out to compete, and I looked over to the guy I was going to be competing against, and he had this tatty old blue belt, and I went, thinking to myself, I'm in for real pasting here. I'm going to get rolled badly. Somehow, I don't really remember how it happened. I won that match. The skin of my teeth, I think. But anyway, when I come off the mat, of course, Carlson came straight over to me and my coach, and he said, congratulations. How long have you had your blue belt? And I said 2 days, and he was like, wow, keep going. That's really good. And just gave me some real words of encouragement. And it's funny as humans how little encouragement we actually need, and particularly when it comes from someone that, for them it's just a passing comment, but for someone that's young and impressionable, it's really, it really makes all the difference, And this is why I guess here I am now, nearly 22 years later, and I still remember that vividly. It made such an impression on me as a young man. That it's those little things, I guess, that set you off on this course for the rest of your life. And so really special.
It's you think about even at school, if you have teachers that you really like, you tend to enjoy the subjects that they like, that they teach you, and if there's a teacher that you don't like, you tend not to like those subjects.
So true.
And there's a psychological school of thought that positive reinforcement is so much more effective in teaching someone than negative reinforcement. And I'll give you an example. I'm a dentist. You can smack your kids if they don't brush their teeth, but a more effective way to get them to brush their teeth is to put a calendar on the fridge. They tick it off, and then if they tick it off every day for a month, they get to do something fun, like go to the movies or something like that. And I'll tell you a story. When I was young, I used to wet the bed, and I was quite old when I wet the bed. and I think it was just because I was lazy. Anyways, put a chart on the fridge, and what do you know? Completed the, I ticked it all off. And my mum I had a day off school, and we went and watched Titanic and had KFC. And so positive reinforcement.
Makes a difference.
Yeah, and when I think about, sometimes I know you're being a nice kid, but sometimes when we train, I know I've completely mangoed something up. And you'd be like, oh yeah. I'll be like, oh Damus, what do you think about this? You'd be like, oh yeah. I know it's a no, but it's encouraging to still have that positivity and that encouragement. For sure. Damus, what are the top 10% of BJJ guys do that the bottom 90% do? Like, let's say, like there's 100 guys, they've all been training for 10 years, all the same amount, all training different styles or different philosophies. What is it that sets the best apart from the rest? Is there a specific kind of approach or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that's a twofold answer to that. One is generally in how they've been coached, and the second part is in how they conduct their training specifically. So, so the coaching side of it I'll come back to, but I guess in terms of the physical training itself, there's not enough people out there doing specific training. And what I mean by that is, jiu-jitsu, generally if you break it down into broad categories, you have a standing component. There's three real areas you can find yourself in. Standing, you can be on the ground in the top position, or you can be on the ground in the bottom position. So three broad categories. Within those categories, there's specific skill sets and areas you can find yourself in that you kind of need to, in terms of a fundamental sense, you need to be across and understand. And then there's concepts around that help you, I guess, see the big picture. But in terms of specific training, what I'm meaning is you can be shown and introduced movements. What specific training is starting in set positions with tight parameters for both people. So if we're on the ground, for instance, and you're underneath and the other person's on top, the top person has only a certain number of things they can do, and the bottom person has only a certain number of things that they can do. So rather than just saying, let's just roll and see where it ends up, what we're trying to do is we're trying to hone specific skills or specific movements under resistance right from the get-go. So I guess, it's that drilling component.
So you're saying drilling is important? Drilling
is absolutely important, but it needs to be done in a way that is progressive and in a way that, there's got to be fairly tight parameters around it, because the idea of drilling is to hone a particular skill. And so what you need to do obviously is just you need to conduct your drilling in such a way that, and I mean you do this for there's 100 different positions you could find yourself in. But again, the methodology is one that you need to have tight parameters for both participants, so you can actually because you can't learn properly without that resistance element. You've got to have that resistance element in. So it's conducting that specific training and understanding your drilling. And there's a lot of people out there that aren't doing it. And I mean, it comes from the coach down. And this is where you see a lot of guys conduct classes around the place, and they go, here's a technique for the night. And it might be an arm lock from somewhere. And then they go, right, now it's time to roll, whack your mouth guard in and let's go for it. But there's absolutely no connection between what you're shown and then what the end outcome is. And there's no bridge between, how do I take that technique that I've seen, which is largely a dead movement, because initially to learn the mechanics, you're doing it on a completely compliant person. So you go, okay, I'm familiar with that, but there's no bridge into actually, how do I take it from, dead to actually being something that's alive, and I can apply it on someone that's completely trying to resist me. So a lot of people don't understand that bridge correctly, how to get people across that bridge to the other side. And really, specific training is where all of that's at. You've got to start small. Always resistance has to be there, but you've got to start small and gradually expand. Or loosen the parameters until such time as that your positions start to connect. And this is where I guess the coaching side of it, a lot of people teach jiu-jitsu in a very linear fashion, and it's anything but linear. I'm kind of, you can't just be all about how. And so much of the jiu-jitsu you see taught, around the place is how to do something. But how is, you need why and when.
Yeah.
And then you're starting to get some context.
Yeah.
And this is where it's important. I mean, you don't have to know how to do something, but if you can understand what where we're trying to go, you're well on the way to actually being able to make it happen.
Yeah.
So you need that breadth, you need that understanding, and you need a coach that is more than just a how guy. How is just far too linear, and it's certainly not the optimal way to learn jiu-jitsu. You've got to understand concepts. You've got to understand how to move on the ground. There's set movements that are really important that you tend to find show up over and over again, and movement underpins everything. In movement, there's common movements, I guess. They show up everywhere, and if you can polish those movements, it's going to put you in good stead for much faster progress.
So understanding the fundamentals and the reasons why allows you to apply that in a larger setting.
Absolutely. Like particularly in an advanced sort of more of an advanced class, like once you have someone that's particularly at a blue belt level and they're looking to kind of move on and develop and start to advance the game, one of the best things I think in terms of teaching is to be able to try and get people to to think in a group setting. So in particular, saying to people, well, who's got a problem with this? Tell me a problem you're having, and then as a group, you can start to get people to give their input. Well, what are you seeing? And this is where jiu-jitsu is about active problem solving, and people that it's what that does too. It fosters an environment where people are making contributions. Maybe they're right with what they're saying, maybe they're not right either. But the point is they're trying to think, then verbalise what they're doing. So in a way, it's a great way to sort of get people to start to develop their ability to self-coach. Because we're almost brainstorming as a group. So that's obviously not for a fundamental type class, but certainly when you get people a little bit more advanced, particularly blue belt on, it's very, very important that they start to, not just take everything that the coach says either. You've got to kind of take ownership for your of your own training, and develop brains trust, I guess, within your ranks. It's really important.
I guess kind of while we're on the topic of learning, and you're talking about possible kind of ways to learn. Well, and we talk about mentors, and you spoke a lot about your primary mentor, Gordinho, yes. Gordinho, so
Professor Gordinho, absolutely.
Would you say he's your primary teaching mentor?
He's my teacher, absolutely, and he is.
So who is he?
Professor Gordinho, I met actually in Brazil in 1998. I was over there with. So when I first started training jiu-jitsu, my first coach was based in Melbourne, Peter Devine. And I travelled with Pete over to Rio, and it was just the circumstances, I guess. I met Gordinho over there in '98. That year, I saw him in the Worlds, and then I went back 2001.
So you saw him win
the Worlds as a black belt.
Okay.
So I saw him win by triangle choke. He was over there. He was just, as a guy at that stage in '98, he was just one of these guys you'd see come in on the mat and just annihilate people. He was a very humble guy, but just mad skill set. And obviously training like an absolute demon at the time. Like he was a full-fledged competitor at that point in his life. Again, made a big impression on me because I was sitting at the side and just watching these guys preparing for the Worlds. It was just a fantastic time. So that trip was great. I went back in 2001. And my relationship with him was my connection to him was probably cemented a little bit more at that stage because while I was over there, my mum passed away. So yeah, like he was sort of central actually at that point to helping me, you know, get home. There was a few guys over there at that stage, including Pete. But I guess, yeah, like that was a fairly significant thing, I guess, for, you know, to happen. And, you know, it sticks in, you know, probably his mind too, because, yeah, it was a bit crazy. But long and short of it was, yeah, like after 2001, I didn't go back to Brazil again. I kept training at home. I did see Gordinho at the end of 2001 up in Cairns, where I was living. He'd come out to Australia. But yeah, after that,
Did you bring him to Cairns?
I brought him up. He was in Melbourne doing seminars. I did bring him up to Cairns to do some training with him, which was, you know, fantastic. And, but yeah, in those intervening years up until, so I basically reconnected with him when I joined Facebook in 2018. And between 2001 and 2018, which is what really appealed to me, is that, you know, you get a lot of guys out there, Dan, that, you know, can go off and they can win worlds after worlds after worlds, but you know, Gordinho, I think he in that time, he really, I could tell just from his resume, like he'd gone on to really focus on coaching and being a great coach. So, you know, he spent time at Henzo's Academy, Henzo Gracie Academy in New York, which is where a lot of the, you know, there's a lot of monsters coming out of that school. You know, it's probably, well, it's definitely one of the meccas for jiu-jitsu in the middle of New York. But then, you know, Gordinho also co-founded the Evolve Mixed Martial Arts in Singapore. So, you know, he'd gone over there and he's founded some big, you know, co-founded some big schools, and then he's worked as the head of the programs at Henzo's in New York. So he'd really taken on that, you know, that thing of, you know, how do you make good students with this? So to me, as I said, when I became a black belt, my focus became coaching. So when I reconnected with him in 2018, that really struck a chord with me. And then, you know, I brought him down to Tassie in 2018, and I spent only about three days with him at that stage when he was in Australia. But the whole time, you know, he was constantly asking me about, how are you teaching? Why do you teach this way? Have you thought about this? Have you thought, you know? And it was just really inspiring conversation. And really
thought-provoking. He was getting you to kind of answer your own questions in a way.
Very much. Very much. And so, you know, and you see a lot of guys, Dan, they get to black belt and they just, you know, they kind of just rehash stuff. You know, they just go in there and they go to class of the night and they just go through the motions, you know. Whereas Gordinho, I guess, has really instilled in me that it doesn't stop at black belt. You've got to, you know, as a coach, you've got to be wanting to be a better coach for your students and a better coach, because again, it comes back to my generational comment earlier that, you know, I don't, and I guess I'll just digress for a moment, you know, it's like with boxing, you know, no one expects Mike Tyson's coach to be able to beat the guff out of Mike Tyson. Like that, it doesn't work like that. But his coach is there to make Mike Tyson the best Mike Tyson that he can be. You know, that's what a coach does. It's not about you being the best guy in the room. But martial arts has that stigma, I guess. You know, there's that mystical element, I guess, to it, where they think, oh, you know, if you're the guy at the front, well, you're the best guy in the room. It's going to be like that for a time when you're starting your school, but over time, that shouldn't be that way. You should actually not be the best guy in the room. You might be the most senior guy in the room in terms of, you know, time served, but if you're doing your job properly, your students should far and away exceed your level, and they should be out there, like, you know, demonstrating the fact that you're such a good coach, because they're way better than you are. You know? And that's my goal. That's really where my goal is now.
And when you're teaching someone your skills or anything like that, do you find that, or even a black belt, let's say, teaching other people, do you think you can learn a lot by teaching other people things as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really believe that. You know, I guess, you know, like early on in my and it's kind of a professional lesson I learned, like in the accounting field, that really kind of helped me with jiu-jitsu. Like, I remember this one day going to my boss and I said to him, I've got this problem, and I just blurted out the problem to him, and he said to me, you know, don't ever just come to me with a problem, ever. Like, come to me with the problem, but come to me with an idea about how you think you're going to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Even if you're completely barking up the wrong tree, show me that you've thought about it first.
Yeah.
And then I'm happy to help you.
Yeah.
But don't just come and make your problem my problem.
Yeah, I understand.
And I thought, wow. And so I guess in some ways, I took that to heart with my own jiu-jitsu because, every time I was training or something, or I hit a stumbling block in my training or a flat point, I would often, I guess, invoke some sort of self-examination then.
Yeah.
And you start to actually question yourself, and you start then to become your own coach. And ultimately, in jiu-jitsu, you kind of need that to happen as well. I mean, there should eventually become a point where your coach can become ultimately redundant.
Yeah.
Because you have enough understanding at some point that you can direct your own trainer.
Yeah.
I mean, my coach is sitting in Florida at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, the beautiful thing about this technology, of course, is that, we can stay connected and things like that, and it's great. But for the most part, I'm over here working myself. I have access to his advice and his knowledge, and I can, his lessons, and it's wonderful. But if I'm having a problem here on the ground, there's an element of self-examination and work that I have to do to actually solve my own problems.
Yeah.
And it's important to me to pass that skill set on to my students as well.
Yeah.
That I'm here not to spoon feed you. I am to a point at the beginning to help you see the big picture. But there will come a point where you've got to you take ownership of your own training.
Yeah, you've got to be resourceful, and you're never going to know everything. And I guess probably sometimes, the more you learn, the more you realise how little you actually know.
Yeah. True.
But and you don't have to know everything. But as long as we're in a day and age now where we don't have to know everything. But if we know where to, and it's not hard to find answers these days with all the online stuff.
Yeah.
As long as you can be resourceful and know about the right questions to ask to the right people, or and it doesn't have to necessarily be people. You can get things online, or there's but I think coming to self-assessment, dropping the ego down. Okay, where did I go wrong? Where can I find a possible solution? Sit down, quiet room, no distractions. Start to think. Okay, how can I deal with this? And I get that as well in my professional job. I get people that come in that don't know anything about dentistry, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. And sometimes people that don't know anything, they'll ask you a real kind of curveball question. And if you've got your ego, if you've dropped your ego or it's out the door, you'll actually sit back and go, and it's just so, I think a really good indicator with a good coach, and some of them, you might not hear it that much, but if they were to say to you, you know what, I actually don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to get back to you, I'm going to find out, or I think that's the sign of a really good coach, because they're that secure that they don't feel the need to have to proclaim to know everything, and they're comfortable with saying I don't know, and it's okay to say I don't know. I actually think it's very admirable, when people admit that they don't know something for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But I really like that lesson you taught there about just being resourceful and asking yourself the right questions and going over it yourself. And
and the thing is, this is a classic example of where one of many ways that I guess jiu-jitsu has infiltrated other parts of my life, and it becomes more of to me almost a strategy for success in a lot of ways. You learn to persevere, and you learn to self-examine and problem solve yourself, both after the fact, but also sometimes on the fly when when you're in the middle of you find yourself in a bad spot and you've got to think your way out of it. Under pressure. Like, there's so many elements of it I find that have translated into other parts of my life that it's just been valuable. It's not just something I do here on the mat. It's almost really a life approach. And they say that about martial arts in general, that there's so many good lessons and along the journey that can be translated into life. It teaches you humility, and there's always someone better than you, and how to handle pressure, and no doubt, absolutely.
want to, I don't know if you don't feel comfortable to answer this, but you spoke, this is not necessarily about jiu-jitsu, but in previous podcasts I've had with people, we've talked about death of family members and difficult times in their lives and things like that. When your mother passed away in 98, was it?
No, 2001.
2001, sorry.
Yeah.
Is there anything positive that you've ever taken out of your mum's passing away? Is there anything that you think about that you've been able to turn into a positive or anything like that?
Probably.
Your mum's life in general? Or?
Yeah, look, I'd probably say, growing up, my dad, I guess in particular, was always one that really, he was always, pushing that, get your education, make sure you've got all of that sorted out. And now my dad was fairly career oriented. My mum, as an alternative, was actually a ballet teacher. So she ran a school, that was her full-time thing.
Yeah.
And I guess in many ways, when I started to develop a passion even as a young fella for martial arts, I used to look at my mother and, in so many ways she was my inspiration like that, because I saw her doing what she loved to do as her career.
Yeah.
And I guess I used to have that, contrasted, position from my dad, who was always, take the safe route, and get the education, do all that thing, and, get a good career. And, but I guess, when, I was always passionate about training martial arts and things like that. But I guess when she passed away, it really, it was also one of those things that really drove me toward being a coach and being the best coach I could be, because I used to see her, because as a kid, I used to watch her teach dance classes and things like this, you know, and I used to watch her with, 30 and 40 girls, and people just stop and listen and take instructions, and everyone working together in time. And I used to just think that, I don't know, it really just made such an impression on me that, to actually be that person, having a central role in helping other people just achieve their dreams.
Yeah.
So when she passed away, for me it was pretty tough. I mean, I was 24, and everyone's you've only got one mum.
Yeah.
So and it knocked the stuffing out of me for about 2 years. Really, it really did. But I resolved at the end of that I was gonna make the best of my coaching career that I possibly could. And I've done that, and I'm kind of thankful for her inspiration.
Yeah, imparting that kind of wisdom on you in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny like that how some parents, or just any kind of two human relationship, doesn't even necessarily have to be a family unit. It's interesting how, I don't know, I've seen observationally that one person tends to take on one role, and then the other like, I'll give you an example. The mum's the clean freak, the dad's the messy one. The dad's the strict one, the mum's the lenient one. The dad's the career-driven one, the mum's the coaching, inspirational, liberating kind of. And I can relate the same thing to my parents. My mum, my dad, in my opinion, is tough. He's a hard-working man, a business. And whereas my mum is really lovely, chatty, pleases and thank yous, just make sure you're okay. It's not business orientated at all. And I just think we're lucky to actually be exposed to those two schools of thoughts, because we can take from here and we can take from here, and we can, we're not being tunnel vision, we're being exposed to a full array of...
Absolutely, and COVID-19 has actually been an incredible thing for actually bringing those two polar extremes together, because Dad always, pushed that career thing, and I guess I've never ever, I don't do jiu-jitsu as my only full-time career, and given that, gyms have been closed down for a few months now, I'm kind of thankful that I've got a day job at the moment there.
Yeah.
So I guess in a sense, I'm thankful that my dad pushed that way, and I went and I got my, did my schooling, and I went to uni. And
You're an accountant.
Accountant, that's right. So, I've got my day job doing that, and the good part about that is too, completely complementary. Like I don't have to, strain my body all day. Like I'm not working outside and doing a physical job. I kind of work and have to use my head more and then I get that physical release of a night time.
Yeah.
So they're perfectly complementary. So I'm kind of grateful that, I kind of get the best of both worlds. So
it's when I was young, I guess I wanted to earn money the easier way, and some people are really hands-on people. I guess maybe you could call me lazy or more intellectually skewed, but I guess that was one of the reasons why I went to uni and became a professional, as opposed to a tradesperson. But I think it's really important to have that physical balance as well. It's super healthy.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah, agree.
You moved down from Cairns in 2008. Is that right?
2009.
2009, and you moved to Hobart.
Yeah, I worked in Hobart for the first 3 years that I was down here.
Yeah. So, because Rona, your wife, originally moved to Tassie, loved it.
Yeah.
And why was it specifically in 2008 that you guys just got transferred, or you asked for a transfer?
We come down to the Australian Championships down here, so it was in Hobart, and the minute we landed, got off the plane, and just was like, we love this place, And
it's a lot different to Cairns. It's
just
different weather.
Completely different. But just fell in love with the place immediately, and I remember Rona turning to me straight away and just saying, come back here and we're going to live. And that was the way it worked out. It was the following year actually ended up coming down. So
you didn't have kids at the time?
No.
So that would have made things a bit easier, because you're a father of four now.
Yeah, that's right. 4 girls. So
you're a busy man at the moment. You've got 4 kids, you're an accountant, and you've started a BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy. So when did you move from Hobart to Launceston?
Well, basically I finished up with the tax office in Hobart in 2012. I did another 2 years working out of Launceston with the ATO, and then I was made redundant at that point because they shuttled their regional offices. It was 2014 that I was up in the north of the state, and then I ended up going out to Ledgerwood. We were actually living outside at that. We ended up then living outside of Launceston, and we were there only until when did we move in? July last year. We actually made the move back into town here. So started at the beginning of last year. As I said, Gordinho, we brought him down in 2018 in March. And I spent the rest of 2018 living out at Ledgerwood, really just revisiting what the fundamentals really are in Jiu-Jitsu, what's important, looking at it through his lens a little bit more. So Rona, my wife, of course, she's a brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and my main training partner really for many years now. So her and I both did a lot of work in 2018, training together, and then we opened the school in 2019 here in Lonnie. So
what month? When was it that you start Jiu-Jitsu? What month was it?
So we officially became Start, in January 19. January 19. So we launched under Gordinho's academy. So Start is so Gordinho is head instructor for Start. So he's based in Pembroke Pines in Florida. So we're the first Start academy in Australia. Under him.
It's a great. It's a great story about Gordinho, how you met him, how you got in contact with him again, the fact that he's so important to you as a mentor, and I think it's super sentimentally fitting that the Start, I find it, I think it really, and I was actually speaking tonight, I was doing a little bit of motivational stuff tonight. I actually was doing a bit of research for myself tonight. I spend a lot of time going over books on Mentor Box, and they say that facts tell and stories sell. That's the story behind Gordinho and all that. It's something that if anyone was to watch this, I don't think they'd forget, and it's something that really sticks out in your mind. I wanted to make that statement there because I think for me as a student, when I hear about that story, it builds more connection to the heart and the story, the story of jiu-jitsu and all that, and gives you more of an appreciation and respect. I mean, this is a great example why martial arts is very, I think, useful not only for self-defense and confidence, but also to develop skills, life skills, humility, respect, appreciation of your elders, upbringings, and things like that. So this is just a really good example about how trying to choke someone out can turn into more than that, can turn into a bit of a life practice.
Absolutely.
And I think this really reflects it that really accurately. What's your vision? Do you have a vision? I mean, I think visions are important. Yeah. Do you have a vision for Start Jiu-Jitsu?
Well, yeah, I do. So as I said, Rona's a brown belt, so her and I are running this academy here together. So at this stage, here in Lonnie, I mean, our goal really is just to develop we want to build a big academy, with a good following, but a high technical standard. That's really where it's at. I mean, as I said, there's a thing in jiu-jitsu that black belts take 10 years to make. I believe that can be done with the right systems and the correct progression in training. I think that can be brought down to half.
Yep.
I think that can be, and that's going to be my goal over time. Yep. I mean, that's no compromise on standards. I'm just thinking though that the right teaching methods, that's achievable.
Yeah.
We're well on the way here. We have, Rona's a brown belt. We have, I had one purple belt here. We've got 2 blue belts, Justin and Scott, who are two blues here. And so, we don't have a lot of ranked students at the moment, but the guys that are ranked are very solid guys.
Yeah.
I think. I haven't left anyone out there. So, but so that's really the goal. And of course, I've also got a brown belt student down in Hobart who's running a school down there as well. So he's not under Start. I'm hoping in time, that may change.
Yeah.
But certainly we just want to, we want to raise the level.
Yeah.
And just get a strong following. I want people to know that when they come in here, you're going to meet nice people, but you're going to have a hard train.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn a lot. A supportive environment and just pushing that technical level hard.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I said to you before when I said, kind of what separates the top 10% from the bottom 90%, and you said that one of the things is coaching.
Yes.
Gordinho is a world champion, and he's been the manager or managed some of the biggest
schools in the world.
World in New York and Singapore, and he's your coach.
Yeah.
He's your mentor.
Yes.
And I guess this is a chance. Well, not necessarily a chance, but it's going to be really interesting to see how, because we all know from experience, as I said, you go to school, if you like a teacher, you do that subject or not. I've really developed a passion for BJJ or Jiu-Jitsu, and I love it. And it will be really interesting to see how that flow-on effect from Gordinho to you, to your students, and the result. Obviously, we're not going to get any results after 12. Like, it's going to take years.
It's going to take a bit of time. Yeah.
But it'll be really interesting to see what the results are.
Absolutely.
And what the observations are, because
we want to build Start. I want to see Start. Ultimately, I want it to grow nationally. I want to see the academy and the team grow nationally. For him as well, because his approach to teaching the art, I think, is really special, and I think it needs to be shared.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people do what he does. Not a lot of people have the pedigree he's got. He's a one of a kind guy. I mean, as I said, there's a lot of guys out there that are champions, but they get to black belt and then they just become a coach. But then the coaching goals kind of don't. For a lot of people, don't really happen. But he's different. He's kind of, he's cutting edge. And this is what, I want to look to grow. I want to grow it nationally, not too fast, but I want to see it. I want to see it grow. I want to see the methodology grow. And in a few short years, I want people to know that we're here and we're serious. And this is a good. He's very, he's watching the whole time too. He's watching what's going on. He regularly, every 12 months, comes across to Singapore because he still heads up Renzo Gracie's programs over there, and you know, he was actually going to be here like April, you know, because he was heading to Singapore, I think, at that stage. So, but we'll bring him the first opportunity we get. He'll be down here again to do seminars, and we'll be, you know, I'm really excited to bring him here.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're going to continue to grow and evolve and just, you know, keep doing the work then.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed tonight. Have you got any favourite? Anything you kind of want to add? Is there any kind of stories you want to talk about, or anything like that? Any messages you want to give out to kids out there at the moment, or anything like that?
Yeah, look, I'd probably say that, you know, if you know, martial arts, I think, is if you're a kid and you have any issues with, you know, you feeling bullied, or you're feeling like you just don't have a path, you know, I really do recommend martial arts. The reason being because it's physical activity with a purpose.
Yeah.
It goes a heck of a lot deeper than just kicking and punching or wrestling or any of that, you know. And I would really strongly suggest that people give it a go. Go and find a school. Come to our school. If you're here in Launceston, come and see us. You know, we would. You know, we would love to, you know, have the opportunity to introduce you to this art. It's life changing.
Yeah,
it really is. And you know, as I say, we've got a great group of kids training. We have a girls only class as well, which is fantastic for all the girls out there. So yeah, think about giving it a try. And if you're an adult, of course, as I said, we've got a few graded students as well. So there's a bit of depth on the mat. You know, there's some people that know some stuff. You know, and you know, if you're an adult that wants to, you know, sort of gives a bit of fitness with purpose, come and see us. We would be honoured to be able to share this art with you and make that introduction.